Today I thought I would just share some things I've been thinking about that are helpful to my berserky mind as it goes through its permutations. I oftentimes go back to teachings that I guess I would put in the class of renunciation, and those seem to help my mind a lot. Although some people I know, they find them kind of depressing, but my mind is already depressed. I use them to get out of depression. And that's when I use them the most, I think. And I was thinking about how I appreciate the Buddhist worldview around just my immediate experience, like, why am I unhappy? Or why am I feeling this? Or, yeah, I would say, why am I unhappy in this moment? And my instinctual conditioning is not the Buddhist worldview. And so it's very helpful for me to think, oh, there's some kind of cause for this. It's not just who I am or the things around me, or things are just like that. And so, especially lately, I've been thinking about what His Holiness is. I'm reading a book by His Holiness, and when he talks about all-pervasive suffering, which is a viewpoint that only Buddhists share. And so this is the notion that our body and minds are under the control of our previous actions. So it's really not in my first thought that my happiness comes from virtue or my unhappiness comes from non-virtue, and that karma is ripening every moment. It's funny how my mind goes. My affliction that comes up that I have to work with the most is anger. And yesterday I had a moment, was it yesterday or the day before, where I actually had a moment where I could have gone into rage. That's how vivid everything was in my mind. And so, you know, the good news is I've learned how to work with my mind much better, and I actually just pulled out of that, just escalating very quickly in terms of that level, and then had to kind of ponder it for a while. And the pondering of it is where I see my usual patterns, which are kind of hard on myself around having these emotions. And so this is why I think these teachings help me so much, because the big picture is I've created the causes to have this. And, excuse me. Luckily in that moment, I said to myself, this is what will send you to the hell realms. Do you want to continue? Do you want to act on this? And that helped me to pull my mind out. But I actually think that it makes a lot of sense to me that things are ripening. And the reason that makes sense to me is because it seems like it's all about a perspective that I'm carrying in a particular moment. And when I have a lot of calm in my mind, there's so much freedom. And I can see there's so many ways that I could be responding to things. And I have, you know, I work to do that. And so, and then I have the karma that I've created in the past that's ripening. And how am I going to, you know, deal with that? But that's not still where I start from. And I always have to work myself out of this, because something, I think it's this tendency to reify everything. It just feels like in that moment, that's who I am, this is how things are. Everything's feels very solid that way. So, yeah, I appreciate a lot of things in the Buddhist worldview about how we get into this, how it perpetuates, and how we get out. And so, most recently, I heard a new word that was, I just find, it's not a new word, but it's an old word that it makes more sense to me now. Because we always talk about the whole path being a path, method and wisdom. That's, the complete path is contained within method and wisdom. But recently I was listening to some teachings on tenets. And in the very first paragraph on this book on tenets, the very first paragraph, it says the chief method is the altruistic aspiration. And then it goes on. And so in this teaching, the person never used the word method. He always used the word aspiration. In his mind, there was two sides of the path. There's the wisdom side and the aspirational side. And all the time when he talked about this in this whole teaching, introducing tenets, he talked about that side of the path as aspirational and how we need both. You can't have one without the other. But I never really thought of it that way before, and that's so helpful, especially given the situation that we can't live up to our own values. It's exactly what Gandhi said. It's not, Gandhi had a very mature outlook on this, that it was the same as what was said in a way that's easy for me to understand, is by an inmate who's in for life. He said, I'm a good Buddhist not because I can do these things, it's because I aspire to. And Gandhi had that recognition that we hold these values high, and we can't live by them, but we aspire to live by them. And so that's really something I think that I find quite beneficial to always turn my mind to. This understanding that you know, we aspire, and this has great force and value, and yeah, a great force. I think that we can't even fathom the force of that. If we could fathom the force of that, when we read the Bodhisattva's, the King of Prayers, when we read that prayer, we would get it, because that whole prayer is an aspirational prayer. And they say even in that prayer that, you know, this whole prayer, everything in here leads you completely to Buddhahood. And it's all aspiration. So I think my message is to keep keep changing our, you know, habitual ways of perceiving and interpreting and thinking about things, because all of those need a little reworking. And we'll be much happier for it. And so will the people around us.